Today's show is a big stretch, a really big stretch for me, absolutely, because it's about two things I know almost nothing about. And that is, or they are, hip hop and skateboard culture. Yeah, hold on a second. I have a feeling a lot of my viewers out there are not into skateboard culture or hip hop, but here's the thing. Anyway, the interview, it's an interview with these two men that made this incredible documentary called The Streets Are Silent, which is about hip hop and skateboard culture. But where we had this coming together, the three of us, was about sound, the sound of music, and how it brings people together and how people experience it and what they get out of it, that sort of thing. And it definitely made me considerably more curious about hip hop than I was before I had this conversation. And I did start listening to it, especially this artist, the Large Professor, who Jeremy interviews in the movie. And this Large Professor's music is in the movie. Anyway, it's a ramble of sorts. Of course it is, because I'm the one doing the interview. But in any case, I hope you enjoy it. Oh, and there's one other thing about this interview, and this is kind of embarrassing on my part. It doesn't actually have an ending. I mean, it ends, but it's an abrupt ending. It's kind of a sudden ending because, I don't know, we just never recorded an ending to it. So anyway, I hope you enjoy it. Here we go. Here are Jeremy and Eric. So bad at that. I gotta do that again. Hey guys, my name is Steve Guttenberg and I am the audiophiliac, and I'm here with these guys. And this show today is expect the unexpected, because I don't think any of us, the three of us, have any idea what's about to happen. But we're going to try. We're going to try to make this work. So I'm here with Eric Brown and Jeremy Elkin. And you guys are partners in a way, right? You make films together, right?
Yep.
Is that fair?
I'm more of the sound side, and Jeremy's more of the filming side, but we have found the synergy where sound meets film in a really interesting way. We've been working together for, I think, 4 years now.
But Jeremy, you're no sound slouch, man. You got some nice gear here.
I care about sound.
Jazz
care about
speakers.
Sound. Yeah.
That's pretty serious.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to make films that can sound as good as they do, thanks to this guy. For sure. Nice to have someone who cares about sound as much as I do.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
But your job in sound, sorry, Eric, but you're support. You're not the star.
No. I support the stars.
Right.
Yeah.
The picture, the image is the star.
Yeah.
He's not in the field with me. He's only mastering.
He's only what?
Mastering.
What do you mean?
Well, it's only once the film is done and we have to mix and master the sound, that's when Eric comes out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, technically, like the job description would be like sound designer and mixer. So once they're all finished with shooting the film, they'll come to me and discuss like what sounds we need to integrate into the film and how we want to, deliver the soundtrack, like how it should all sound at the very end. Mm-hmm. And that it's almost like making a second film in a way. Mm-hmm. And I've heard Jeremy say something, akin to that, where you have to kind of rediscover the film when you consider how sound plays its part. And Jeremy's films are very sound-centric, and a lot of the subjects in his films relate around the music industry and skateboarding, which had a huge influence from hip-hop in the 90s. All the Streets Are Silent, which is the feature film that we did a few years ago, was basically the convergence of hip-hop and skateboarding back in the 90s in New York City. And when you have those two subjects coming together, the sound is such a huge character, and it was almost for Jeremy like making a second film after he spent years going through archives and sourcing all this material and creating.
But the sound itself they're all shot on video, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple elements. You have Large Professor's score, which is how would you describe it? It's probably about half the film. And then there's the archival, right, elements, whether it's still images, moving images, high mini DV, etc.
When we sit down together, we have to talk about the things that are really important sonically, and the interviews are always front and center, right? But then when we diverge from the interviews, we go into archival or whatever it is, we kind of open up the door for me to create some sense of a world And that's where a lot of our conversation tends to reside, which is, okay, how can we enhance this world? How can we pull people in? How can we make things feel more immersive? Those tend to be the conversations we have when it comes to designing the sound and mixing it.
And where can people see it?
It's on Hulu in the U.S.
Okay. And the name of the movie? You did you
All
say?
the Streets Are Silent.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on Hulu in the U.S. and it's also available for purchase on Apple iTunes and Amazon.
Okay.
And that's more like globally, but it's also in the U.S. on those platforms as well. Yeah, but it's streaming on Hulu. Yeah.
Well, with that, I got to ask you that question. The audiophile question. You first.
Yeah, the most important question of the day.
Eric, are you an audiophile?
100%.
All right.
100%. Yeah.
I like that. I like this decisive answer.
The certainty.
The certainty.
Yeah,
Yes.
especially after talking to you, I think that
Yeah.
there's being an audiophile, I think, can really classify in a lot of different ways that people care about sound. I think that was like the big
Oh, yeah.
takeaway. So especially after talking to you, yeah, definitely.
Oh, good. I won you over. So, Jeremy, what about you? The man who's sitting in front of these incredible speakers.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, have you ever done an interview with someone who isn't? And if so, who?
Well, I interviewed a man named Yale Eveslev, who owns or runs Luakabop Records, and I asked him if he was an audiophile, and he said, no, absolutely not. He was very defensive about that term. And I said, but wait a minute, Yale, you have about 10,000 LPs, you have a lot of weird, amazing turntables and all this tube electronics and big horn speakers. All the things you have scream that you're an audiophile, and yet you're not an audiophile. That made for a really interesting interview.
I mean, how would you classify like let's say like a hip hop DJ that has 80,000 records, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they have just like a run of the mill speaker system, 2 turntables and a mixer. They would never ever consider themselves audiophiles because their definition of that or their idea of it is so different than I think how you're coming to it.
But see, you're wrong. You're wrong, because all they have to do, this person you conjure there, all they have to do is care about what it sounds like.
Right.
To them, not to me, to them. If they're looking for a certain sound, they have to use, this cartridge. I assume they're pretty hung up on different cartridges, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's the kind of thing that, I don't know, an audiophile would be thinking about. Like, I can't use that cartridge. It's crap. I want to use this cartridge because it sounds the way I want it to sound. That's an audiophile.
I don't know, yeah.
I like the way you're
I mean,
processing
I
that.
just wish we could like plant a DJ next to me and
See what they
have
think.
it
Well,
sit
arrange
with
that,
it.
I guess
please.
it depends too if people, the connotation of the term audiophile is a
I
negative
know.
thing.
It's for negative for audiophiles. I understand. I do.
But if you care about good sound, then you care about good sound.
Right.
But then also, how do you define good sound? Like that. It opens up like a huge can of worms when it comes to.
That's all about the person whose ears it is.
Exactly.
That's all. They only got to please themselves. But anyway, we were talking just before we started doing this about hip hop music and DJs and all that, which is such a mystery to me, and I guarantee you a mystery to most of the people that watch my YouTube channel. And it's fascinating from afar. You guys talked about it like it's hard to comprehend that a human being could do live DJ. It's hard for you when you've seen it and experienced it a lot. And I haven't. I've never experienced it. So it's a way bigger stretch for me. But the whole idea that I'm an audio guy, Eric, you're an audio guy. Where do we begin? How could you explain this to an audience which is mostly not as old as me, but older than you guys? And basically, what is going on? It's in the world of how people listen to music and enjoy music in that live situation. I got a better idea. You know what? How does it, the sound aspect of it, I assume it's really loud, right? usually?
Yeah, I mean, it's a better question for him because he's probably experienced more live events than I have.
Okay.
I mostly see a lot of that afterwards, so we kind of have this distilled version.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's live music, so it's going to be nice and loud, and I think that I think what's interesting is what we were talking about before is kind of the difference between something that feels really human and something that starts to disconnect the human element. We were talking just about the physicality of DJing, and Jeremy was walking through Large Professor's routine that he saw the other night, and how choreographed that felt and how human that was because he was so involved with the performance.
And he's doing it with vinyl.
And he's doing it with vinyl.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And that for me...
Because a lot of guys just do it off a laptop or something.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. Yeah, it's like the convenience versus like the tradition almost. You know,
Is it for tradition or is it sound?
Both. I would say it's both.
The analogness of being all analog is part of it.
I mean, especially for hip hop, like I don't think it just doesn't hit as hard. You know, that low end kick on a early '90s hip hop recording on wax versus a file. I don't know. I think it's a totally different experience, and I think people like Large Professor or Kid Capri or Stretch or one of these guys, like they crave that this specific like magic that comes with those old recordings, something that they've had and played so much throughout their lives, and they remember when it came out and they bought it, and I don't know, I think that's probably part of it, but also just the way that you mix when you DJ hip hop, I think they just crave that feeling that you can't get from digital, maybe. Or I'm not a DJ, but...
Do you think the audience cares? Whether it's analog or digital?
I mean, there's a magic to it. I think so. Like, just the other night when Large Pro was DJing, like, there's so many people crowded around just watching his fingers and his...
Okay.
Just like the way he was going back and forth from the bags and crates that he brought in of all his records back to the tables, the back and forth. Like, if it's just a laptop, I don't know. Buttons are different than trying to find a groove with a needle live in front of an audience. I don't know. Two different things. But you got to speak to Large Pro. Stay tuned.
There's a part two.
Yeah. Oh, really? Okay, cool. Yeah, me too. I'm in. Count me in. Yeah. See, to me, one of the things, and you know, I'm going to give you my perspective on this, but it has nothing to do with hip hop or DJs, is that there's something about people playing vinyl that pulls you in more than digital, as in people are less likely to multitask when they play an LP, when they play vinyl, than if they play a file or stream or something.
But I think in terms of DJs, there's the other component, which is they're actually creating a new composition because the mix is almost, I feel like if you were to ask someone like Large Pro this, it's like the mix is almost more interesting to them and the beat matching than just track 1, track 2, track 3. Like like what comes out of that transition is, I think, and like making a new composition is sort of like what's equally as interesting to them as the sound.
That makes sense. Yeah, they're creating something that never existed before.
It's different every time.
Yeah.
And it's different every time. So you can put, you know, we were just talking about Rakim. You could put the same Rakim beat with a soul record or a funk record or another hip hop record or an a cappella or instrumental, and you're blending genres to make something new every time you play. Versus, I guess you could say the same with digital now, but I don't know. I think that there's something that's lost in there.
And but we talked a little bit about that. I asked, but now I don't remember how you put it, that they're not reacting to what the crowd is doing in terms of altering the set.
They probably are. I think they are. Depending on the location, like depending if they're in a small, intimate, like club, like the one I saw Large Pro perform recently, versus like an arena in Dubai or something. It's two different scenarios.
But in a small club, they can make eye contact with the DJ.
I mean, when they're in the zone, they're not they're definitely no eye contact.
No,
but
okay.
They're
working.
Yeah, they're working for sure.
Yeah, sound is almost too complex, of a thing as it relates to each person individually to say something is good or bad. Because it starts to, you blur the lines between where sound can take a person too. For you, good sound can mean it makes you feel like you're in a live hall.
Right.
Right? So that opens up an entirely different category for why something may sound good or not good, where it can actually take a person. So for me, it's always been too complex to say something is good or bad. And I've always thought that the listen like a listener kind of approach, like the man off the street, I've heard that before, and it makes so much sense. It makes so much sense, especially because we live with things. When we work on something, we live with it, and we're listening to it for 10,000 times, right? So we know it too well.
We're too close to it.
We're so close to it that to detach ourselves, it's as easy as getting a fresh set of ears to tell us if something feels right or doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Which we can achieve, but you need time away, you need space, and you just need like separation.